This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
All right, everybody, welcome back into the Bartholomew Town Podcast after what was an absolutely gorgeous weekend that we had here in Rhode Island and in southern New England. Hopefully you had a chance to get out and enjoy it as much as possible. Obviously still just completely shrouded in the aftermath of the horrendous events that took place in Uvalde, Texas last week. And so much going on in that regard, specifically to that matter and in general with guns. A lot of movement here in Rhode Island, and we'll certainly be getting into that on the podcast later this week. And if you have a question or you have any feedback on that, feel free to email me, bill@ripodcast.com, or tweet at me at Bill Bartholomew as we continue to just grieve and take a step back and reflect on what the hell is going on here and what's wrong with our society on such a deep level that we can get into a position where these types of events unfold. Number one. Number two, that you have the types of absolutely clueless, moronic, insensitive reactions from so many people as well. And that includes people here in Rhode Island. So obviously it's something that we're going to continue to dig into and talk about here on the podcast. And we'll have some guests later this week really focusing on the Rhode Island aspect of things. There's a number of different major topics that are front and center when it comes to the reaction to what took place in Uvalde. And we're going to try to hit on all of them in one way, shape, or form coming up on the podcast over the course of the next several days. But for today, a really interesting story and a really interesting conversation with the CEO of Charcuterie Artisans. Now, they're the 8th largest manufacturer in Rhode Island, and I bet you didn't know that the 8th largest manufacturer in the state manufactured ham. And even this vegan here can appreciate just how fine the product is from the outside looking in, but also just the incredible process and the business model that exists there. Now, this is a business that was formulated from a merger between two firms, one of which is Daniele Foods, based up in Burrillville, Rhode Island, as well as Creminelli Fine Meats. They're based out in Utah. And Charcuterie Artisans, they're a national leader in manufacturing fine food. They supply major retailers, restaurants, food service customers with what they describe as the highest quality Italian-style cured meats. So, of course, it's always interesting to look at different Rhode Island businesses. This is a really cool business that is producing, a product that is, as we'll hear in the podcast, available across the country and is in basically every grocery store in the country. And it emanates from Rhode Island, from Burrillville, Rhode Island. So that's cool. The business practices is very interesting as well. There's a lot of innovation taking place. And what really caught my attention was the blending of both artificial intelligence, so you've literally got robots in the plant, as well as skilled artisans that are essentially advanced butchers that cut these meats to create prosciutto or whatever it may be, and put them into what ends up going out into the public-facing side of things under the Del Duca and Creminelli brands. And they also do some, I guess what you call white label manufacturing for other fine retailers. So this is a cool Rhode Island business. They're blending both artificial intelligence, robots, along with skilled workers. During the day shift, they've got like 300 employees. So this is a big deal happening in the state. I was able to take a tour of the facility, and I'm going to post a social media video pretty soon, kind of like a recap of that, that you'll be able to find across the Bartholomew Town and my personal social media pages. And I'll probably get to that today or tomorrow, but just a cool business and a really cool look at something that's happening here in Rhode Island that maybe you know about, you probably don't, and you probably should, because when we talk about our different super sectors, obviously the blue economy is number one in a lot of contexts and in terms of effort right now, in terms of really a big push. Of course, our tourism industry, which arguably falls under the auspices of the blue economy, as well as the green economy. We have very specific importing of automobiles that takes place at Quonset. I mean, there's a lot of very specific and interesting large-scale businesses that take place here in this that emanate from the state. This is a different one, and I think it's worth profiling stuff that falls off of our radar screen on a traditional basis. So that's exactly what we do as I sit down with Chris Bowler, the CEO of Charcuterie Artisans, up in the forests of Burrillville in his office after a tour of the facility. So hopefully you enjoy this, something a little different here. Again, it's a rough period here, and over the weekend, just some of my personal conversations with people are angry, and I'm not just talking about, specifically with the context of guns. I think in general, there's a renewed sense of like, all right, what the hell's going on here? And again, we'll profile many of these questions later on in the week, but I wanted to do something in the innovation side and really just go a different direction for all of us today. Coming up later this month, of course, Inside Rhode Island Public Health, presented by Commonwealth Care Alliance, delivering uncommon care to Rhode Island. Stay tuned for that, as well as Inside Rhode Island Cannabis, presented by Pure Vita Labs. Visit purevitalabs.com. Okay, let's get to it. Talking with Chris Bowler, CEO of Charcuterie Artisans, live from his office in the beautiful municipality of Burrillville, Rhode Island. All right, so we just took a tour here at Charcuterie Artisans, and we're in Burrillville. Beautiful drive up. And one of the things I just want to start right here that you said, by the way, we're with Chris Bowler here in his office atop. I'm looking out the window. We're surrounded by trees. I mean, this is just an incredible scene. But more impressively, inside the tour, you described that your product's in just about every grocery store in the United States. And that's something that Rhode Islanders should be proud of. So I guess if you could just kind of set everything up and then touch on that notion that this is something that is a very impressive Rhode Island business.
Yeah, so Charcuterie Artisans is a new company, but it's built from a combination of a couple companies that have been around for a long time. The one that will be familiar to some people, at least in Rhode Island, is Daniele Foods, which was a precursor to Charcuterie Artisans. It merged with a company in the West called Creminelli Fine Meats, and just in the last few years, we've turned it into this what is the largest producer of Italian charcuterie products like prosciutto, coppa, salami, pancetta, et cetera, the largest producer in the country. And it's right here in Rhode Island. As I've spent time around Rhode Island, I've realized that a lot of people don't realize that, but we're making a product, first of all, a product that I think the state should be really proud of. It's made by hand, it's highest quality, but it also has a lot of breadth in terms of how much we're servicing the country and the grocery stores in the country. So again, we're in just about every grocery store in the country with our brands, and we make some product for others. But yeah, it's everywhere. It's good, and I hope Rhode Island will, as a state, that will appreciate that and be proud of it.
Yeah, that's really interesting stuff. Let's talk about the practical side of things, the merger, if you will, or the combining of Creminelli and Daniele, and I hope I pronounced that right, because did I pronounce it right?
You got it exactly right.
Awesome. But let's talk about that merger and the decision to come together, and then what resulted from that.
Absolutely. So, this was in 2019. The Dukjevich family that started Daniele Foods, they were ready to move on. They built this beautiful, good-sized company, just with a ton of hard work and courage, and really staying true to the original Italian recipes that they brought from their generations of family over here, but they were ready to move on, which happens. And at the same time, this company in Salt Lake City, Creminelli Fine Meats, a little bit younger, just a 15-year-old company, but built by some entrepreneurs, me being one of them, and we were also ready to take the next step. Some of the owners and original founders were ready to move on and do new things, and so the decision was made with a financing company out of Chicago to buy both companies, put them together, and create this new entity called Charcuterie Artisans. I became the CEO eventually of Charcuterie Artisans. My background in the last 15 years with dry-aged meats kind of prepared me for that. And so we decided to put it all together, share resources, and create something truly unique in the United States.
Let's talk about what you do here at this Burrillville facility. Again, the listeners right now, we just did a tour, and I put a video up that is sort of talks about that, or shows, I should say, what we saw there. But explain for everybody what happens here.
It's a very unique process. There are only a handful of plants in the United States that do this. It's actually, and even in Italy, it's a pretty rare thing, except if you're in and around Parma, Italy, you'll find dozens and dozens of plants that do what we do. It's a very specialized type of production, and which is why it's all in kind of this district in central Italy. In the United States, there's a handful of us that do it. We bring in raw meat, and there's really kind of two different processes. One is ground fermented, where we take meat, we grind it like you're grinding a sausage, but we then, as opposed to just cooking it like you would on the grill, we ferment it. That means we put it through a process where, just like a whole variety of other fermentation processes like making bread or brewing beer, we put in bacteria or yeast, and we create we acidify the meat, and then we dry age it so that it loses water and it sweetens over time. Then we have things like prosciutto and coppa, where we kind of salt or tumble the meat in spices in the cases of coppa, and then we just hang it up and we dry age it for months and months and months until, again, it loses water and it sweetens. And if you come and see our plant, you'll see just long rooms, rows and rows of prosciuttos or coppas hanging, dry aging, becoming sweeter and becoming delicious before we slice them up and sell them, and typically slice them up and sell them in packages that people can use on sandwiches or charcuterie boards or whatever you'd like. Yeah,
really cool facility. And the thing that really struck me was that it's this, I don't want to say ancient, that's not the appropriate word, but sort of, an old school approach to a product. And at the same time, you've got a lot of AI, you've got robotics in there, you've got a lot of people who are artisans that are skilled cuts, almost like an advanced butcher, if you will. At the same time, you've got this super modern, very clean, post-COVID, a lot of protocols type of facility. So it's this blend of the old and the new. Talk about that, because that's really fascinating.
Yeah, so we, this product is really specialized. I've mentioned the dry aging process. It is, we take cuts of meat, and where most are cooking them and basically maintaining the same weight, we are aging most of the water out of it to concentrate the flavors, and also to create the sweet flavors in the dry aging, which means we make it iteratively more expensive in every stage of the process. Hundreds, thousands of years ago, we believe the Romans figured out these processes, and they were too good not to continue to doing through the generations. And so we've never been willing to let go of those amazing flavors, but at the same time, we want to make them for more people, and we want to keep them as affordable as possible. Back in the day, they were delicacies. They're really kind of still delicacies today, although a lot more people enjoy them. To be able to do that, you have to have some parts of it that are done by hand. You can only, every cut of meat that comes through is unique, and so it requires a unique amount of salt, or it requires a unique a unique amount of time to age, depending on how it comes into us. So those parts that have to be done by hand to maintain quality, we do by hand. That gives us a huge challenge of making sure that everything else is done as quickly and automated as possible, so that we can slow down and do the parts that are most critical, and we can afford to do those all by hand.
It's almost a good model for any industry right now, is to figure out where does the human touch benefit the product the most, or the whatever it is that you're creating, and where can you expedite things using modern technology, whether it's remote work or the hybrid model, of workforce and so on and so
Exactly.
forth. Let's talk about workforce, because that right now is a challenge for a lot of firms, a lot of small businesses, you name it. Talk about your leadership and your success during the COVID-19 pandemic, and how has the industry changed since COVID-19 first appeared and we went through that crisis. Now, obviously, it's not over, but it's certainly a lot different.
Yeah, so we found ourselves on in a hot spot in two ways. Obviously, everyone I think listening knows that Rhode Island was one of the first places that COVID started to pop up. At least one of the first places we started to find it and discover it. As well, we're in the meat industry. We have a few places in our plant, as you saw, where people are close together. Not everywhere. There's a good amount of space in these dry aging rooms, but there's some places where people are close together, which is typical of a meat plant. So you combine those two things. We felt like we were at ground zero in some way in the early days of COVID. So we had to spring into action really quickly. We were very concerned about making sure our employees, that we call all of our employees artisans because of the role that they play in making these products, making sure all of our artisans were safe, and we wanted to make sure that we were getting food to grocery stores, that there were food on the shelves. So we also felt that kind of double mandate. So it was all hands on deck. We were trying to find good information. Good information was hard to find. We're all figuring this out, but we're trying to, make sure we can get all the PPE we need. And so we put together a kind of a task force, and every day at 5 p.m. we were like reinventing, okay, how are we going to do these processes? And we have hundreds and hundreds of people, 600,000 square feet of manufacturing space, and we're kind of reinventing it every day. How do we put shields in between people? How do we, should we put, there's a question early on, do you put masks on or not? How do we kind of separate people so there's not, and anyway, we went through those processes, and it was really just a question of being flexible and every day being willing to try something new to keep people safe. I'm proud to say that certainly we didn't avoid anybody getting COVID. Nobody, I think, no company avoided that. But we did we didn't lose a single person. Nobody passed from our staff from COVID. We were always below the curve because we went all out to keep people safe. And so today, what that means is it's probably just a heightened level. As a meat plant, we've always had a very heightened level of food safety and personal safety. It's just part of what you do as a meat plant if you want to be successful. And so these are not things we're unused to, but it's come to it's another level, and so we feel like we're coming out of this with a very, very safe, clean environment and safe and clean process. As a management group, over the last 2.5 years since this new management group has taken over, we've come in with a philosophy of putting people first. We have a very firm fundamental belief that a great organization produces great products and great financial performance. And so this is a lot of this has been figuring out how do we make this a great environment to work in. Part of that is safety. Clearly the COVID scare, really made human safety first and foremost amongst all the different ways we try to make it a great environment. So that ended up being one of the very first things we tackled, but also tackling things like how do we make sure that it's an environment where people are thriving and people are getting better at what they do, and also an environment where they feel like they're treated well. They have schedules that work with their family lives, and they have the kind of benefits that make it kind of easy to manage life and health and all of those things. It's for me, it's why I wake up in the morning, why I come here, is to make amazing product and to create an environment where people feel like they're doing good things and happy and can care for their families and their loved ones.
Yeah, on that note, let's talk about the company culture and what's a day in the life here. You wake up in the morning, a day in the life for you, and also just the factory in general, the plant. What's it like here?
Yeah, so we're in the middle of the forest here in northwest Rhode Island, so picturesque surroundings. It's a large plant. people come in, they get suited up. You have your covering so that when what people come in from the streets on, they cover those. They're big long hallways where there is we do work with meat, so it's a little chillier here, but you join your team for the day, whether you're trimming meat, or whether you are working on the slicing machines, or whether you're part of our maintenance staff. You get together with your team, you huddle, you make your plan for the day, and hopefully everybody here is working hard and enjoying the people. Our culture at Charcuterie Artisans is, I mentioned, putting people first, passion for what we do, and love of food. Those are really the three things that make this unique as far as manufacturing, as far as food manufacturing. If you spend any amount of time here, you're going to be having conversations about the food you love, the restaurants you love, about what you do, and what and your pride, and what your commitment or your part of this process of making great charcuterie.
What sort of job openings are there here if someone wanted to jump in? And it seems like you have, when we were talking on the tour, there's like 300 people working here right now, but are you looking for more people? Yeah,
and that's just on first shift. So yeah, we have hundreds and hundreds of people working here, and a lot of different roles. I will say, some of the roles that we kind of are always looking for great people, things like maintenance and HVAC, looking for people to join those teams. Always looking for great supervisors, people who have experience in food manufacturing and come in and help us run these teams. But really, anybody who's experienced in food manufacturing or wants to get started in food manufacturing, we have entry-level roles that have really strong competitive wages, strong benefits, and a great working environment.
Last question. There's always been, as long as I can remember, even growing up here in Rhode Island, I was gone for a decade, but just this notion of like, this state is terrible for business. The taxes are terrible, the workforce isn't good enough, you may as well not even think about setting up any kind of business, small, medium, large, whatever, in Rhode Island. That's just a cultural thing. I hear it all the time on talk radio. People call up and scream and yell about this. Is that true?
I haven't found that to be the case. We have benefited a lot. So we're the 8th largest manufacturer in the state, and we get a lot of personal attention, and there's a real commitment to making us successful in this state, and that's what I have experienced. So it's been really positive. Our workforce is great. We found people who want to come, that want to throw themselves into the work, that want to be part of a team, that want to be part of what we're trying to accomplish in big picture, which is enriching life through charcuterie and leading the charcuterie industry and this growing industry. So we found support. I'm excited to tell more people about what we do, so that this is something that Rhode Island can be proud of, and something that Rhode Islanders can brag about.
Chris Bowler, Charcuterie Artisans here in beautiful Burrillville, Rhode Island, the 8th largest manufacturer in the state, and who would have guessed it's ham?
It is. It's a fine, dry, aged ham right here in Northwest Rhode Island.
Hey, Bartholomew Town's on the radio every Saturday afternoon at 3 p.m. Tune in to 99.7 FM and AM 630 WPRO.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.